Hello and welcome back, all of our wonderful people. My name is Jess Oda Bashian. I will be your host here at the Nested Healing Podcast. Today we have a wonderful group of people talking about somatic experiences through trauma. And to start off, let's welcome our first guest, Manji Hoy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Manji Hoy. I am a recent graduate from Cal Poly Pomona. I have a bachelor's degree in computer science, and I am connected to this in that I am a client, I suppose, of NI2C and am currently going through my own process of, healing all the trauma I've had in my entire life. And I come into this as a prior student athlete. I've done many different sports and activities throughout my life. I did karate when I was a kid. I did swim when I was in middle school and high school. I've done martial arts, other martial arts besides karate, like Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, I already said karate, judo, and kung fu, boxing. I've done a lot of things physically, and that's kind of what I bring to this discussion.
Awesome. Thank you for coming and being here. Our next wonderful guest is Jason Morris. Would you like to share?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Morris, and I am an executive coach and leadership facilitator. I do coaching with NI2C's repair program, and I also work with leaders all around the world, particularly in the nonprofit sector. I guess my background relates to this topic. I've done a lot of trauma-informed coaching. I also have extensive experience working with my own trauma, working through Hakomi therapy, psychedelic assisted therapy, somatic body work. Have been trained by the Strozzi Institute, which is a somatic coaching institute, and had a couple of years experience with Resma Menachem, author of My Grandmother's Hands, and the Education for Racial Equity and their somatic abolitionist program. And I think this topic is really near and dear to my heart, both personally, having done a lot of work over the last few years, and seeing how trauma shows up in clients and being able to sit in the fire with people as they experience and as they heal from their trauma. So really excited to be here with all of you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And our last wonderful, fabulous, amazing guest is Carol Ann. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. I'm Carol Ann Soltz. Listening to the two of you and your accomplishments and accolades, I'm just here. And what do I bring? My personality type tends to be withdrawing, and withdrawing types tend to not have much connection to our bodies. And so, just from a personal quest of growth, I've really tried to dive into how do I access my body? How do I access the wisdom of my body center? And I did a 200-hour yoga teacher training as one means to explore that. And a lot of my practices, I have a therapist who is somatic based, and just a lot of opportunities to look inward and kind of find out what's up, what's happening inside of me. So my connection to NI2C is I'm dear friends with the founder, and would follow her anywhere in what she's doing, and have taken one of the attachment courses that she offered. I think it was this summer, but I don't fully remember. It might have been this fall. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys all for being here. You're all amazing. And I think this is a topic that a lot of people can relate to, whether they understand what somatic means or anything, which basically means like, well, I'll ask you guys. How about that? Um, so I guess my first question to you guys all is I guess kind of a two-parter. What does somatic mean to you? And then kind of what physical activity helps you relieve stress induced through trauma? So I'll leave that to you. Whoever would like to go first, go ahead.
I can go. So I guess when I think of somatic, I really think of soma, which is our entire entity. A lot of times when we talk about somatic, we're focused on the body, but I think it's the mind, body, spirit connection. And for the second question, I guess I would answer it in two ways. In terms of stress reduction, things like exercise and meditation are two things that I do. But in terms of work for healing trauma in the body, things like tremoring, TRE is a type of program. Hakomi therapy, which is really being present to what's going on in the body, and again, meditation are the ones that I think have been quite supportive for me.
I guess I'll go next. And I think for me, somatic, when I think of like somatic things, I think of, you know, connection between my physical form and whatever's inside my head, more or less. Like I think of all the, all the effects of my mental health on my physical being, such as, when I think other people can probably agree to this or like notice it too, that I remember every moment in my life where I've been in like a sort of depressive state or you know maybe however long however long I'm depressed for. During those moments in my life, I definitely feel as though everything is physically heavier, physically more draining. um Even like simple things like finding the energy to get out of bed would feel like the equivalent of trying to run like 5 miles straight, no break. Like that's what I think of when I think of somatic. I think of like the different effects, especially like the moments where I'm happier. I definitely notice physically feeling lighter, feeling more graceful, feeling more fluid. As for things I do, what was the second part of the question? I vaguely remember right now, but
It's physical activities that you enjoy to relieve stress or
mhm.
to work your body through a trauma, either trauma or a trauma response.
Okay, thank you. For me, I think that the physical activities that help get me through trauma and or trauma responses. One would be just breath work in general. You know, when I was a little kid, I got more or less diagnosed with like pretty strong anger issues. Having to go like anger management class and whatnot. And the one thing I've always carried on from that was whenever I'm like in rage, I take very, very deep breaths. I try to slow my breathing down. I try to like physically stop my body from racing out of control. Um, Besides that, I would say other activities are like once again, I do a lot of martial arts, so martial arts are definitely a source of release. Just um, working on the heavy bag, letting my mind sort of turn off a bit, letting all my thoughts kind of fade a little bit into a background, and then letting just everything that was under the surface take form. Let it rise out of me and put it all into a bag.
I appreciate hearing both of your kind of descriptions of somatic, what that means to you. I come with just a very like layperson's understanding of it, of that it's a connection to my body. Um, at like a very cellular level, that some of it I can bring consciousness to, and there's other layers that I can't quite access yet because of just the protective nature of my body. Um, and I have a few activities that I do to kind of like moderate my stress levels. I walk every day, and I intentionally walk without listening to anything. So just walking with my own thoughts. But in a particularly like high stress or traumatic situation, I do kind of take care of myself in different ways. I am very lucky to live near a lot of natural hot springs, and I like one very healing practice for me is to just immerse in the water and literally like allow that the flow of the water to be like a visualization of what I can release and what I can where I'm getting stuck around the rocks in the hot spring. And anyway, it's a visualization practice as much as it is like a full body immersion in these healing waters. And yeah, and I also use other therapeutic modalities like craniosacral therapy or things like that help me access, not even access, but release things that I'm holding that don't serve me, that aren't mine to hold on to. And I don't always bring those things into conscious awareness. I just know that it's a supportive practice to let go of tension, stress. I would say more tension and stress than trauma necessarily, but yeah.
Awesome. I'm kind of similar in a way. For me, to kind of alleviate stress, I like to take a really hot. I don't have as much access to like a hot spring, as amazing that that sounds. So I just take a really hot bath typically, or I'll go at Cal Poly we have group fitness classes, and I'll take like a Muay Thai or I'll take whatever class is kind of available, and then I take a really hot bath. And then I find that for me is just enough to release all of my stress and all of my tension and whatever is going on, or I paint, which I know to a lot of people doesn't sound very physical, but when you're doing it, for me it is, because it's like you have the brush in your hand and you take the paint and you have to think about how to hold your hand to get the right strokes and everything. So for me, it is very physical and very somatic. On top of it, I guess I should answer the first question too while I'm at it. For what is somatic means to me, um, it means like it makes me think of my nervous system a lot, and I think we'll probably dive more into that. But it because of like obviously like the root soma, it makes me think of a brain cell, and also like reminds me of my vagus nerve. And for me, that's what fires off. And I can tell that's what drives me crazy and makes me need to like work things out of my body. Is really the response from that nerve. And like from feeling it in my stomach and in my head and just making me want to like run or do an activity or something. For me, that's kind of where I come from with it. I don't know if any of you guys kind of relate to that, and like feel free to jump in. Like the way that like just the going off of the nerve um kind of responses, and it just makes me need to move.
I think to a certain degree, I can relate to that in that, for me at least, those responses, I feel like they somewhat take the form of wanting to move, but it's almost like, for me at least, it's a mix of wanting to move and wanting to like scream. Like a lot of it for me is during like especially stressful times, uh I found that my body will like have thresholds almost where it's like it starts off with, okay, I can still kind of manage this, but I need to like I need air. I need to start breathing, and that's where I'll like try to use like breath work, and I'll like just try to even though my body's screaming it at the top of its voice for air, I will actively try to like we're fine. We can just breathe. If we just start hyperventilating, no one's gonna get better. We gotta like slow it down. And then the next threshold is from like instead of like the next threshold of stress would be instead of not being able to breathe, it feels almost like my I have too much inside me. And instead of not being able to take enough air in, it's almost like I don't have any way to get rid of everything out, like everything inside me. Like I just want to scream basically. It goes from I need to breathe and I can't to I need to scream and I can't. And then the final two stages becomes like I just want to I want to take it out. I want to take it all out in every single way I can, physically, whether that be running, hitting, just something. I want to scream it out. I want to cry it out, just like getting it all like I know it's like every system in my body activates all at once in like an almost explosive nature. And then like the last part is just becoming numb. The last part is just becoming getting to a point where it's almost like my entire physical body shuts off because it's overloaded. And it's it's almost like with a car, first you get the smoke, then at some point it combust, and then all you're left with is the smoldering ashes at the end.
Oh, I had a comment about it because I feel you really hard on the like the need to get it out. I think for me, I think stress is such a toxic thing for us to hold within our body, and we need to get it out so bad. And I think there are different ways for us like to need to get it out. And I relate to like the need to like get it out in some sort of like vocal way or something. For many years, I was a musician. I played saxophone for like over 10 years. And for me, that was my outlet for a while of getting stress and tension out because of the constant, you need to regulate your breathing and like the constant, like you have to hold a stream of air for like almost 20 seconds long and like all of that. Um, and I think for me, that was such a good way of de stressing in such a stressful environment because of just like how just the nature of it. Like you're listening to something that's calming, you're participating, you're able to focus on something. Um, yeah, that's just from me. I like can relate to that. Just kind of music for me has been like the big outlet. And I feel like it is for many people.
Yeah, I also, Manji, I can relate to as a kid, I was and as like a female identifying kid, um I was I was definitely told I was a very angry child. And in hindsight, it was like I didn't know. I mean, I couldn't scream because I was a girl child in the South. And so, like, culturally and socially, those expressions were really um, not welcomed. And and yet I did not have other tools or resources of like, how do I diffuse this? How do I release this? So hell yeah, I'm angry because there's a lot going on inside of this little person that I didn't have the words for it. I didn't have the physical movement for it. I mean, I did ballet. Ballet is lovely and not a like punch it out, like move it out kind of thing, you know? Um, Yeah. So I'm just and really really had to do a lot of work around anger as an adult, because I was like, oh, well, I no longer have anybody to blame this on. So it was, it was my turn to like to come into my own empowerment of dealing with it. Um, and part of why I was like, well, I guess I need to know like what happens before the blow up, because I literally just didn't know. I mean, it would just be this explosion, and then I'm like, well, what the hell happened here? So it was this like backtracking and then noticing like, oh my gosh, I feel it in my fingers. I feel this like a boundary's been crossed. I'm being misunderstood. Whatever it is that's kind of my trigger, and I literally feel it in my fingers, and I'm like, oh, okay, great. But it's taken, I mean, the better part of 10 years for me to, I mean, first it was like I could feel the like fire coming up, and now it's like I can notice um, the more subtle signs of like, oh yeah, something's going on. And there's so many moments for me to intercept now, but gosh, as a little person, I certainly did not. I, I didn't know that there were things you could do. Um, I just knew I was an angry kid, and I had so much shame over being an angry kid. Yeah.
Well, and just hearing you talk, Glenn, I think of we all of us have a little kid inside of us. And, a lot of people define trauma as it being too much, too fast, and it overwhelms us. And then it gets locked in the body. And, I think that as I hear you talking, one of the things that in my own trauma healing and when I'm working with clients, it's how do we slow down? How do we slow it down and notice it and allow it? So there's, anger, as you're mentioning, has such a stigmatism in society, and particularly for women. And there's a reason why uh, women are also suffer 80% of autoimmune disease, and there's a link between autoimmune disease and repressed anger. And so here's the trauma, that lives in the body when it's not expressed. And so I just love what you're saying about slowing it down and normalizing it. Anger is actually a wonderful emotion. It gives us clarity. It gives us strength. It is a signal that something's not right. A boundary is being violated. And if we can feel it and draw that distinction between anger and aggression, and be with that feeling of anger and let that wave rise to get that clarity and strength, and then do the right measured action, then that wave can subside, and that's a healthy expression of it. But then we have to do all that work to let all that pent up storehouse of anger out in healthy ways to get back to balance. And I think that is in my own personal experience working with a number of emotions, anger, sadness, um, and with clients, it's that allowing that which is stored within us to have a safe place to express. Um, that's what this somatic healing of trauma is all about.
Yeah, for me personally, in my experience, because I've been through a very angry stage of my life as well. Um, Acknowledgement of why I'm angry is like 100% okay. And like even because I've gone through the NI2C repair program as well. We work a lot with like imagining the inner child and the inner teen. And for me, doing that helps me grow a lot as a person, of being able to acknowledge that, like, yeah, they have the right to be upset in that moment, but I'm now in a space to tell them that it's okay now. For me, that has brought me a lot of peace and a lot of peace of mind. Um, and yes, I do a lot of physical activity to kind of work through when I feel a wave of overwhelm overwhelming like emotion, I would almost say. For me, it's not always almost anger or anxiety, although most of the time it is. It's like an overwhelming wave of emotion of any kind. Um Sometimes I feel like I can do as much physical activity as I want, but I have to at least acknowledge it. Otherwise it doesn't always get out. I don't know if any of you who ever had that experience either, where it's like there still has to be acknowledgement in order for it to be moved past. And that was also, I want to say, Jason, I did not know that about the autoimmune thing. That is a very tasty note. That is very interesting.
Yeah, Gabor Mate's done a lot, and has some incredible books and videos about it. And yeah, I was shocked about it, but it makes sense, given how the messages that we get as kids and the messages that society has given and continues to give.
Yeah, in my study, we've been like working with the idea. I probably brought this up on previous episodes of the perfect person and that how detrimental that is to the individual, where society creates the notion of a person should be exactly like this, and how in fact no one is ever going to be like that. And how it really causes so much harm. And how like we have to work through a lot to realize that, especially in today's society where there's access to the internet and it's so much interconnectivity, but even then still they have these weird frameworks that like all of that is not always what you need to be. You need to be yourself in a way that like you need to take care of yourself, if that makes sense.
I like what you said about the acknowledgement piece. I think, another thing that I've learned about in my own trauma healing, working with people, is our system, our ego structure has an incredible survival mechanism, and it's designed for us to survive and procreate. And if it gets too much, that the trauma or the energy is too much, we check out. And so it's really easy to check out and still do physical activity and not heal the trauma. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's our body's wise way of saying, this is too much. I can't handle it. I can't stay in it. But I think that the real healing, as you're saying, comes from like acknowledging and really staying in it as much and trying to understand where is this coming from? What is that emotion or that energy? And then finding the way to release it.
No, it's like there's pain from fighting it almost that adds on to it. Like I feel like it almost creates a bigger like wall if it were like a tsunami, right? It would make that wave even bigger.
I definitely really like the tsunami idea, and also the idea that, just from listening to both of you talk about it, it's brought the idea to me of almost the physical activity itself is, I know we mentioned earlier with our definitions of somatic being that connection between mind and body. I think it's almost poignant that, the trauma and the trauma we experience leads to stress in the future. That stress then becomes trapped in our bodies, and like through physical activity, yes, we can alleviate some of that stress, but we can't really like solve the problem of it. It needs to be that teamwork between, okay, I'm gonna physically work out whatever I'm feeling right now, but I also have to like I have to look inside to actually analyze where the source is if I want to actually like deal with this in a long-term solution instead of just taking these small gaps. And like the reason why I mentioned that I like the idea of the tsunami is that for me, I was also thinking of it like in a sort of water aspect, but more in the sense of like I'm like imagining like a dam where all the trauma, all the traumatic experiences, all the stressful experiences, um, like all the repressed emotional reactions that we create, that we have in our lives. I think all of those are like the water of the dam, and they just slowly fill up, 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 with the dam being our body. And at some point, we start reaching a point where the dam starts leaking, and that's like, that's when the emotion starts overflowing. And then I would equate like, with what I was mentioning about the explosion, and also what Carol Ann was mentioning about the explosion, I would equate that almost as like when dams have cracks in them, where, you know, it goes from maybe a little bit of the water's leaking over the top. That's, you know, it's a problem. It's a sign, definitely, but it's not like it won't kill you automatically. But the second cracks start forming, that's when it starts getting dangerous. Because then, you know, all of a sudden, before you know it, it just floods out everywhere. The crack turns into a bigger crack until the dam finally breaks. And all of a sudden, everyone you care about is being affected from your own, you know, from your own emotional explosion, which you don't mean to, but it's just that your body can no longer contain it all. And I just thought that all that, you know, all that information that you guys were just talking about was like really, really almost poetic, I guess.
Anji, I love that dam analogy. You know that they say that hurt people, and that's when that
Mhm.
dam starts to crack or break without control. And I think that the dam is the trauma. You know, trauma stops life
Mm.
force, and when we can actually recognize that it's the energy is backed up, and almost like they just did up in the Klamath, up in Northern California and Oregon, where they finally this past few weeks they opened up the rivers and kind of strategically took down the dams. We have to do that with our trauma too. Like rather than having it the dam crack and overflow on its own, can we recognize it and find healthy ways to let the waters flow again? And that's the release of trauma and the restorance of well-being.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think both of you so beautiful. The metaphors, I'm eating them up. I'm if anything, I'm like I lean more creative, and so anything that's like a little bit like that, I'm like yes. But kind of bouncing off of that, I had a question that I thought of. Let me find it. Um, that like I kind of wanted to bring up, which is like, what are some resources for listeners that they can access to support themselves and others with like trauma first aid and healing, or just like in general, just being able to like help process in a way? Like, what are baby steps we can give that maybe you guys have from your own personal experiences or just know of from helping people, obviously, um, with like just little things to help work to start to start to just start breaking down the dance, I guess, in a healthy way.
If I would have to give like a sort of baby step, and you know, like we just said, uh, like I just said, especially like I see the physical aspect as sort of like the baby step before you reach into like I would consider doing any physical activity sort of that like makes you feel good about yourself, makes you feel just better in general as a sort of baby step. You know, contrast that to the much bigger step of, you know, really sitting down and seeking some help at least for, you know, dealing with those past experiences. And I don't say seeking help in like I don't I don't know, like I'm adding this addendum because to me saying seeking help almost feels like a negative thing. But I would say it's like a positive thing in that all of us kind of need help at some point in time, and there's nothing wrong with, you know, say and there's nothing wrong with admitting that you need help. I think if anything, it's actually like a strong thing of like to acknowledge that, you know, there is this problem that's been plaguing you that you cannot deal with by yourself. And, you know, it's the humble and strong move to actually make the step to get help with that, to ask for someone else to help you. But yeah, going back to the question, sorry about the little ramble there. I would say like the baby step I would recommend is just any sort of physical activity that makes the person feel better, you know, whether that be, you know, just walking during the sunset, you know, taking in, you know, that maybe it's yoga, maybe it's um, you know, riding a bike, maybe it's rock climbing, whatever, right? Whatever just sort of makes them feel better, uh, something that they enjoy, something that they see themselves doing long term, and something that they can use to sort of take their mind a little bit off of the stress, at least in the moment, take it off of the source and just let their mind go to something better, I guess.
I wanted to really quick jump over to Carol Ann because I know you do a lot of yoga and amazing work with that. And I had a question of like for I know I don't do a lot of yoga. Fun fact, believe it or not, guilty as charged. I would like to, but I just don't. Um, when you I know I hear a lot that like in yoga you can move a lot of like trauma and everything kind of through different like poses or movements and stuff. Do you feel that? And like, can you, as someone who's uneducated, could you educate me on that? And kind of like how that feels for you.
Yeah, I mean, I can share from my experience. There are um, there are some yoga poses um, that can feel incredibly vulnerable. And and a lot of people experience tears in yoga, and I think it's because some of those positions, like, you don't necessarily know. They're like, oh, I'm just gonna, I mean, even shavasana, which is literally just like, it's also called corpse pose, so it's, you're laying on your back with your chest open, and you can have your palms up or your palms down, but just imagine yourself in that posture. It's really vulnerable just to lay with the front side of your body open. Um, and and that's a simple pose, right? You're just laying. And yet, what it can bring up because of the openness of the posture is a lot and can sometimes be too much even. So even kind of coming back to that initial question of the what are the baby steps, like, I mean, I'm sure there's someone like Gabor Mate that could say, I imagine it being really personal because I couldn't I couldn't access even that shit had happened in my childhood until I knew I was safe. And I don't know what that looks like for everyone. And I work with women who have experienced trauma that I could never imagine having experienced, and they did not have those resources to be intercepted. I meet them in prison, and that's a it's pretty common for someone who experienced a lot of adverse childhood experiences to end up there. And so I'm thinking about, like, gosh, what would I tell? I have one particular woman who comes to mind. I'm like, what would I tell her 10 years ago? Go for a walk? Probably not. Lay in shavasana? Probably not. I don't know. I mean, how do you where do you find that place of safety inside of yourself enough to even acknowledge what's happening? Um, yeah.
No, thank you so much. Um, that was incredible. I really appreciate that insight. Um, the point of safety I think is like very key, where it's like in order to move forward, you do have to have a place of safety, whether it be physical or within yourself. And thank you so much for bringing that up and letting that come to the surface. I think moving on from there, I think another kind of thought process I come to, which is uh, when it comes to the somatic system, because it's so within the body and it is the bridge between, I would say, physical, almost metaphysical, mental, is like how, because we can say all of our own experiences and everything, but and how much that can help other people, but like for us, I think my question would be more, how somatically can we calm ourselves? I feel like that's kind of the root of a lot of this, is like we do all the physical stuff, we do all the stuff, we mentally acknowledge it because we need to calm ourselves down, right? That's kind of the root of it. So it's like, how can we, when we're having, for me personally, somatically, when I'm going off, I like to think that my anxiety is really high and I'm like a road runner. I don't know if you guys remember the road runner from, oh, what is the brand? I forget. But you guys,
Hanna-Barbera,
those old, yeah, those old, like the
Wile
Wiley,
E. Coyote.
yeah, like, and the road runner. Um, for me, that's what I think of like when I'm in a, I would say like almost like a the triggered state where I'm going off, and I do need to have a place to settle and be safe in order to calm down. So I feel like my question to you guys is like, what is your, how do you stop? How do you guys take a minute to say, I need to stop? If you understand what I'm trying to say.
Actually just say that. Like I will speak to I have two kids, and especially when they were young, and I would start to feel that like flooding of overwhelm. I would just have to say like, I need a minute. I need to pause here for a minute. There's a lot going on and a lot of requests or whatever it was. So sometimes I do just say that. Um, and other times I just take a really intentional breath. Um, yeah, because slowing down helps to like, the little like glitter jar, that you shake and it's like chaos, and then just letting it settle. Like sometimes just that very intentional, I'm with my inhale, I'm with my exhale, and like I can just feel the settling start to happen. Yeah.
I like how you identify your anxiety. Oh, sorry, Jason, you can go
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
I just wanted to say I like the way you identify your anxiety. If anyone wants to else share how they identify their anxiety, go ahead too. Go ahead, Jason. I give you the floor.
Oh, I was just going to say there's a lot of tools that people can use, and one that I use with clients is really just envisioning my feet and my legs as a tree trunk, and envisioning roots extending down into the ground and really grounding, because for me, it's related to anxiety, which is up in the head and swirling. And when we ground ourselves, we can slow down. And then, there's a lot of techniques. And I guess going back to your last question, I think maybe in the show notes, we can put a link to the repair program. And I know there's some free resources on the Nested website that will give people some ways to breathe. As Manji mentioned, there's some other somatic techniques. And I'll also mention that there's a wonderful program called Healing Together. That's also another nonprofit that does community-based trauma healing. And they also have an emergency trauma first aid kit that you can download for free. And, I think that back to your last question, one of the most important things is to find somebody to talk to, some people to talk to. We have this illusion that we're supposed to be individualistic and, kind of pull ourselves up all by ourselves. And that's a great harm to individuals and to society. the trauma and the hurt has happened collectively, and that's where the healing is. So finding places, safe people to talk to and to normalize what's coming up. You know, when trauma comes up through the body, one of the things that happens is we often don't know what's happening, and it feels really foreign and scary. And if somebody can help us regulate and just say, this is actually good, this is okay, you're okay, I'm here, you know, that's and we can learn to give that to ourselves. That's how we can heal and heal each other.
Thank you. Thank you for the resource too. I'll make sure that I link it down below in the description.
Yeah.
And kind of bouncing off of that is like, yeah, we're herd animals by nature. And it's like, as much as like we do, like let me backtrack a little bit. We're herd animals by nature, but because we're so with the internet and everything, I feel like it's individualized us so hard. And especially with the pandemic and stuff, it just isolated us really hard. And it's been really hard. I feel like I've said it a lot, but for individuals to create those interpersonal bonds and like relationships, and like I know that for some people that is mostly where a lot of trauma comes from, is from interpersonal relationships and ACEs and all of that stuff when interacting with people. But also being with community does heal, and finding your community does heal, and it's scary, but it takes effort. And yeah, it's just kind of, that's kind of where my mind goes, kind of bouncing off of that.
I think just swinging back around to like the question of, you know, how do we, you know, slow everything down? How do we deal with it all? I definitely connected a lot with what Caroline was saying, you know, you know, literally saying stop. I think for myself, that has it's always the goal to be able, for me, like it's always the goal of being able to like actually just vocalize like, hey, I need a minute or some of that. But I think I know for sure in the past I've not done the best of that. I've definitely had moments where um like I want to vocalize it, but I can't. So I have to physically get myself out to like get myself away from just everything. I know like a lot of times, especially I think on some level it might be habit, but like when I was a little kid, I remember moments where I'd have like, you know, just overwhelming amounts of, you know, anger, panic, this like impending feeling of dread. And the only thing that would ever calm me down would be like if I'm at home running into my room by myself, shutting like closing all the windows, turning off all the lights. I have to be like in total silence and genuinely feel like the world is like quiet and feel like the world just stopped. Um and that kind of follows me to this day of like sometimes experiences are just too much, and I will actively walk away from everything and just like try to put myself into a position where I am by myself, um just so that I'm not like freaking out anymore. And on top of that, you know, um I know Caroline definitely mentioned the intentional breathing. I would say for myself, I do take very intentional breaths, but kind of for me it's somewhere between what Caroline mentioned with the intentional breathing and what Jason you mentioned with the imagining yourself as a tree. For me, I personally imagine myself as like a fire. Like I'll close my eyes and take a very deep breath and just imagine it's like almost like a fire on a stove. You know, I imagine it going from very high flame to just slowly cranking it down all the way, and I just keep breathing until the fire finally stops, until it's just off. And like that's when I found that I've like slowed myself down enough that I can deal with whatever the problem is at hand that's like created this stress in me.
That's a good metaphor. Like I said, I eat them up. Um, sorry to bring it back up. Yeah, I think my integral coach and I, for my grounding and stuff, because I'm, like I said, I'm the road runner. I keep going, I keep going, I keep going. She tells me like I do a lot of grounding where I just sit down in a chair and I say, my feet are on the floor. My butt is in a chair. The chair is made of wood. And it's like basically kind of like an anti-anxiety type thing where it's like I'm saying all of the things around me and like where I'm at and what I'm doing. And then I end with, I am okay. I am here. I am alive. I am okay. I can get through it. So I think that is also like just a nice little verbalization. Um, I think when we speak out loud, it helps us a lot. Um, More. I don't know if there's science behind it. I haven't looked it up, but like the verbalization is so key for like a lot of us. I find to like really get something out because we can say something in our head as much as we want, but then it just stays in our head, and when we put it out into a space, it's out finally. I don't know if there's any, Jason, if you know anything about that. So you are very kind of do a lot of this.
I think what you're saying makes sense. I think writing it down too, even if you don't have somebody to say it to, our thoughts often are just spiraling and we're not even aware of them. So vocalizing it, writing it down allows us to actually strengthen the inner observer that we have. You'd mentioned a little bit earlier around kind of awareness, and we aren't our thoughts. We're the part of us that recognizes our thoughts and is aware. And so then we can kind of say, oh, do I actually really believe that? Do I believe part of it? Maybe not as extreme. Maybe I don't believe it at all. And it's just been rattling around in there. So yeah, saying it, writing it down, I think both are great.
Yeah. Humans are just very complex little guys on the planet where we're just here and we're doing our best.
Well, our prefrontal cortex is quite young as compared to the rest of our system. So we have very young minds that get us in a lot of trouble.
Indeed. At least we still got neuroplasticity though, for the most part.
Yeah.
At least we can still keep changing, evolving. And I feel like kind of ramping off of that. That's our whole goal in life, right? Is to evolve into a better version of ourselves and to keep going.
I just say, I wish I had the quote in front of me, but as you're talking about the mind and the prefrontal cortex, that our bodies are wise, well beyond our minds. Our bodies have been around for billions of years. Our minds a fraction of that, and so reconnecting to our bodies and their wisdom, whether it's the trauma, whether it's our gut instinct, um, we've lost that. We've lost it since Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am," and we can see how it's what it's doing to the world. So coming back to our bodies individually, collectively, is how we can heal ourselves and how we can heal our communities and our world.
Sure, definitely. I think is I don't even know what I think right now. I'm just reveling in what you said and just like, yeah, yeah, very, very amazing. I think my next kind of question that comes to mind to ask you guys and everything is how at what point do you become awareness of your somatic system kind of going off? Because for me, it's when my stomach starts getting upset. Because my for me somatically, it's always like my vagus nerve is always what keeps me centered. It's what makes me when I get stressed out, it either makes me dizzy or I get nauseous, and it's just what makes me stressed. And typically at that point, that's when I become like aware of kind of like how of when I need to take a break. Do you guys have like one of those like little fancy? Not really fancy. I guess it's fancy. Little awareness system, alarm bells built in.
For me, the more work that I've done on myself, the more healing that I've done, the more sensitive I am to pick up the whispers of the body. Maybe sometimes when it speaks, I don't have to wait for the shouts as much, 10, 20 years ago, I had a panic attack that put me in the ER because I passed out with a clenched chest. That's the body shouting. That's way too late. Now I can feel anger rising in my hands and in my face. I can feel anxiety in my stomach with a knottedness or a clenching in the chest. So there's a lot more subtle signals that I need to pay attention to my body before it starts shouting.
I think like it's interesting and terrifying in the way that you just mentioned that 20 years ago for you, it was that like your anxiety attack was so bad that your like chest physically clenched up. Because for me, I know that like my signals are definitely like high stress, high anxiety. I feel from like my trachea all the way down to like my lungs, everything just compress. Like I feel it's like pressure, just slowly compressing everything. And then for anger and stuff like that, I feel it. You know, I feel like a burning of the back of my neck, all the way up to like the crown of my head. And then like sadness, right? Like when I'm experiencing a feeling of sudden, just deep sadness, all I can feel is like my head is swelling, almost of the pressure just building up inside. And the weirdest part is I feel sometimes, especially like my sinuses and my tear ducts almost like behind my eyes, as if someone's like trying to push like their finger through my eyeball from the back end.
Mm.
I think it's very interesting that how physical human emotions are and how much we neglect that they are so physical. Um, for me, I'm like a chronic migraine sufferer too. I chronically get them at least once a week. Um, and they are linked to stress or high emotion or just like too much light. That's a weird one for me. But it's very interesting to have emotion and feel the physical relationship between them and the wholeness of the body as in itself.
Yeah, even just that distinguishing between the feeling and the emotion. Um, yeah. Jason, you said the whispers of the body, and I love that because I feel like I'm more and more noticing the whispers of my body as opposed to um, the screaming. And to just go back and be part of the statistic, I have an autoimmune disease that's a thyroid related autoimmune disease. So it's in my throat. So it's literally like this blockage of my voice, this blockage of my opinions, all of these things that were so like literally tamped down in childhood and came up as like oh yeah, okay, now your neck is special. Um, and I also think that was my body shouting, like, please pay attention to me, and being able to then I mean, certainly the original diagnosis was very medical related, and it didn't take long for someone to be like, so you know, it's also maybe related to being a woman in the South, being you know, all of the things. And um, that I didn't even, I mean, my body obviously noticed, but I did not have a conscious awareness of all of what was spiraling in my body until I couldn't function. Um, and And now I am so grateful to notice, oh, my fingers are tingling. You know, like, I feel that lump in my throat as an indicator that I need to say something, and I'm for a number of reasons, choosing not to say something or hesitant to say something. Um, yeah, I'm gonna remember the whispers of my body, because it feels very gentle as well, and like um, a more nourishing approach to being kind to what my body has to say.
I so appreciate you sharing that. And part of what comes up for me is, you know, we weren't taught any of this. And our medical system still does not understand this, the economics of the medical system do not align to this. We treat the symptoms once the body's shouting. We don't actually look for the whisperers and help people understand that and then work with it so that it doesn't become a shout. And it's tragic. I can feel the anger, the upwelling of anger in my system as I hear about that, because yeah, it's I appreciate so much what you just shared, Carol Ann, and I see it, I hear it, I felt it, my own. It's everywhere. And can, how do we learn how to heal that, so that there's less shouting in our bodies.
Yeah, thanks.
Caroline, for sharing. Appreciate you. And thank you for being here. And thank you all for being here and sharing so much wisdom, being part of this. We're getting close on time, but I wanted to see if there's any last conversation we all wanted to have, or if we feel very good in the moment with what we have, or how's everyone feeling tonight?
I throw that question back to you. And is there anything else that you were hoping that we would cover for listeners, to support them?
Jen's reminding me to do a checkout question, but no, I never have an expectation for the way they go. I think we did an amazing job with all of the tools that we have and presenting them to the listeners, so that way they can take something away from it. I think definitely you can take a lot away from this episode, and I greatly appreciate all of you for being here and taking part in this conversation. And yeah, I I'm very pleased to have you all here and pleased with the conversation we're having. What is one thing you're going to do after this to like help, I guess, decompress for the night? For me, I'll go first. I'm gonna finish writing a paper and take a hot bath. That is my reward. So that's my thing. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, so I'm just going to tie it to today's somatic theme. We're dog sitting right now, so I'm going to go play with our little puppy here, but I'm also going to tune into how my body feels. So like let the joy in at a cellular level, and be really mindful in playing with her.
I think I'm going to stretch my body out, um, loosen up the old joints and whatnot, and maybe maybe head off to the gym, get some exercise in, you know, process how my day's been overall while moving, and relieve myself of any stresses that have been in my head for the week.
Very nice. And then here, I'm gonna read Carolyn's. I'll read yours out loud. I'm going to walk my dog and then take a hot bath. Sounds like a nice time. Alrighty, y'all. Have a wonderful night. I wish you guys having a good time.